Good morning, everyone. I think everyone is aware that we are coming upon our annual BSA AML training with Gateway, and that stands for Bank Secrecy Act Anti-Money Laundering. So I wanted to just gather you all to discuss a few key items that, especially as client-facing employees, I think will be important for you to make note of when you're going through that training. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. As I mentioned, we've got training upcoming, and I'm hoping that the details within this kind of pre-training will get you set up with a nice foundation going into your training. So let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. We are going to look at compliance with the Customer Identification Program, better known as CIP. This also can be referred to as Know Your Customer. This is important when we're onboarding new customers. We're also going to talk about comparison with government sanction lists, the beneficial ownership control persons documentation. We'll touch on currency transaction reports, and then we'll finish off with reporting suspicious activity. So let's start with the customer identification program. When onboarding our new clients, we are required to gather the following information to verify a person's identity. And these individuals could be grantors, beneficiaries of a trust, beneficial owners, control persons. So on each of those individuals, you're going to want their date of birth, their address, their driver's license number, their social security or taxpayer ID, and a photo identification. And most of this information can be gathered by obtaining a scan of the client's current driver's license and obtaining a signed Form W-9 for the client. And these are documents that you'll need in that new account opening process, so you should have this information in hand. It's important to note that if the person seems evasive in providing you with this information, or they flat out say, I'm not going to give you this information, you'll need to have a conversation with the Chief Compliance Officer, and you can work with him to determine what we're going to do next as far as onboarding this client. If it's also important to note that if we do not move forward with that account opening based on lack of information, we still have the responsibility to report those interactions. So again, work with the Chief Compliance Officer and compile as much written documentation as possible. So let's talk about government sanction lists. This is another step in the pre-acceptance process, and here we'll be utilizing the Office of Foreign Assets Control, or OFAC, online search tool to check the person or business entity's information against the online sanctions list. This is to determine if the person or the business entity appears on any list of known or suspected terrorist organizations. If you do get a match, immediately contact the Chief Compliance Officer and again work with him to determine if the match is valid. If it is valid, he will report that match to the OFAC compliance hotline. Note that if you do not get an OFAC match, but you do have suspicions about moving forward with this account opening, have that conversation with the Chief Compliance Officer so that you and him can determine what's the best way to proceed. Finally, again, be sure to fully document in writing initial matches and maintain that documentation on file, even if that match is determined to be not valid. So now we're going to move into beneficial ownership. Beneficial ownership is an important topic. Even though FinCEN currently does not require a beneficial owner report filing for U.S. entities, we still must identify all beneficial owners and control persons when we're doing pre-acceptance of trust accounts that hold corporations and LLCs. You'll need to fill out an internal beneficial owner control person form to include with the account opening documentation. And because there's oftentimes confusion regarding what a beneficial owner and what a control person is, I thought I'd kind of walk you through those definitions. So first of all, a beneficial owner would be a person owning at least 25% of the company. We need to identify these individuals. If a business entity owns at least 25% of the company, know that you're going to have to continue to drill down to the person or persons that own that entity and get their information. By any control persons. A control person may not own 25% or more of the company. They might not own any of the company, but they may have significant control of the company by managing, directing, and making key business decisions. So they definitely need to be identified and reported. Once you've filled out that information on the beneficial owner control person form, you also want to run those OFAC searches for those beneficial owners and control persons identified. Let's talk about currency transaction reports. This isn't entirely applicable in what we do in day to day in the trust world because we don't work with a lot of cash transactions, but it's important that you be aware of the requirements should you have a situation that arises. So cash transactions, and this means cash or coin, that are over $10,000 in a single day have to be reported. To be clear, there's no general prohibition against handling large amounts of currency, but filing the CTA report is required. And it's really important to note that transactions cannot be broken up into smaller amounts to avoid CTR reporting. It would be a crime to do so. So if you have a client wanting you to go that route, know that we cannot, and that would be, I think, important to point out to the chief compliance officer that you had a client that was wanting you to do so. Finally, let's talk about suspicious reporting. Reporting suspicious activity, I should say. This is required. So if something seems suspicious, report it immediately to management and or the chief compliance officer. Know that these reports have to remain confidential. Do not disclose to anyone inside or outside of the firm other than the appropriate parties that you have made a suspicious activity report or any details of that report. Management may ask you additional questions to determine if a suspicious activity report should be filed with FinCEN. If warranted, management will take the lead in filing that SAR report. Remember to keep an open line of communication with management and or the chief compliance officer to ensure that as a firm, we're following all necessary BSA and AML requirements. To be of note, this has been an area of focus in a recent Division of Banking exams, so we want to ensure that we are following our policy and the regulations that are in place, and of course, documenting appropriately. In preparation for your upcoming training, I hope you find this information beneficial. You're going to be receiving an email in the next few days outlining how to log in for your training and when that training must be completed. After completing your training, if you have any outstanding questions, please reach out to the Chief Compliance Officer for additional clarity. Again, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.